lives from beginning to now, but not every detail. We won't be here. We don't want to be here longer than 2 hours. So yes, we are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and again, this was. We thank you for everyone who came, some from far away. That's including myself. And then from Florida, Mary and Buck have driven nonstop. So hopefully by the end of my talk, they'll still be awake. Okay, next slide. So the parents of the parents. Here we have on the left side the parents of Alex Zachariah, my father, Mary and Manil G. Zachariah, and on the right side the parents of my mom, or parents of Prema, Reverend Nathaniel and Elizabeth Barnabas. And you can see that none of us children or grandchildren met our father's father, because he passed away right after the World War II. And of course, my mom's parents were very close to right after I was born. And we remember them fondly. Next slide. Of course, we remember my dad's mother fondly, because she was around for a lot of our youth, and many of us remember her. And remember visiting with her many times. And just to recognize, it was her birthday just recently, 26th of June. Okay. Next slide. So this is a picture of us, at least my parents' family, immediate family, Alvin, Alina, and me. I still can't believe it. With our grandmother. I'm not sure why we were dressed like that, but maybe that was the fashion of the times. I appreciate Alvin's flannel bottoms. and my sister and I's knobby knees, socks pulled up to the knee. It's interesting, but so are the times. Next slide. So here's my parents were born sometime in the 1930s or 40s. We can't give their age, so we have to be close. Their birthdays are coming, August 13th, and that's on my dad. That's actually my father's picture on the left. On the right is just a stock picture of an Indian baby. I could not find her baby pictures. Maybe she looked like that, I don't know. Next picture. So my dad was born not in India, but in Borneo, Malaysia, which is where they were living with his mother and father. I think his father worked for a oil company based in the islands of Borneo. And they were living there quite well, and until the World War II started. And when World War II started, they had to. He sent his family back to India to keep them safe, and he stayed on. And actually, he was in the war. So that's when my father was born. That's actually Borneo, a picture of Borneo. It's a very beautiful place. Next slide. My mother was born in Mangalore, India, and that's actually a picture of Mangalore. If you Google anything, you can find it. But I don't know which part of Mangalore that is. Probably a river. With a nice sunset. And anyway, Mangalore is in the state of Karnataka, south of India. So, and of course, my father's family is from Kerala, as you all know. Next slide. Where did they meet? They met in North India, where both of them went to Christian Medical College in the state of Punjab, in Ludhiana, where they went to medical school together. And that's a picture of their medical school. Next. So in college, the only pictures I have of my mom being actually a fast runner. She actually won a lot of races, 100 meters or shorter, not a marathon runner. And that's a picture of my dad while he was in medical school. And that's where they met. And again, the story of how they met was that I think they met each other and they liked each other. So here's the wedding picture of my mother and father. My father's tying them in, which is a traditional thing that is done, and that signifies the actual being married. It's a Malayali tradition, if I'm correct. And so that's my dad tying them in on the neck, and it has to be done correctly. And clearly it was. Next slide. Here's a picture of them, of course, leaving the church. I never saw this picture till Blessed Church showed it to me. He found all these pictures when he went to India. How long ago?
Just in December.
Yeah.
They were deteriorating in the album, so I took pictures of the picture.
So he actually took a picture of them to save them as they were getting older. But that is the picture of them. How did you get in color? We had color?
Yeah,
they had. Next picture. Next slide. Here's a picture of my parents' side of my mother's side of the family. And we have all the names, and we have some over here. Ravi is on the bottom. I don't have a pointer, but Ravi is in the black suit? Black suit. And his brother is next to him. Is that right?
No, his brother's in the top row.
Oh, top right.
Nandita is next.
Nandita, right. Nandita is right in front of my mother?
Dad.
My father. Okay, that's Nandita. He's right here. So we do have a lot of my mother had 4 older brothers. Is that correct?
Yes.
4 older brothers, and they're all there, and one sister. So actually, the top, you can see the top row from the left. Those are actually her brother John, her sister Shanta, and next to him is Philip. And on the other end is Thomas, who's actually in Chicago. Couldn't be here today, but he came last time. Satish is right next to him, so that's who also couldn't be with us, but he's with his father right now. Next slide. So after they basically grew up, Alvin was born in November 1965, and showing a picture of my parents as they were young and starting to have kids, like many of us here. Next slide. This is a picture that Blessing found. Again, he took this is trying to save the pictures, but this is right before my parents left India to come to the United States for living there while my dad was training. So that's on the right side is my dad, Alvin, and my mother, my grandmother's in the middle. That's Blessing standing, and then that's Binut Chechi or Mary being held. She's a tiny baby. And of course, Blessing's mom, Blessing Mary's mom and dad, right before they flew to the U.S. Next slide. So this is where they flew from India to the United States. They flew straight to Indianapolis, where so my father could start his fellowship in medical oncology. So he was a physician, but he wanted to specialize in oncology, medical oncology, and so he did his fellowship at the University of Indiana. Next slide. So in September 1969, just in time, I was born. So that's probably a month or 2 after I came, after they moved to the U.S. Next slide. And then, between 1969 and 1972 they did a lot of stuff in the U.S. Of course, they were in Indianapolis, so used the Indy 500. That was probably my dad's first car with Alvin on it, and my mother and Alvin and myself as kids. Next slide. So before they came back from the U.S., Alina was born in May 1972. Next slide. And they actually flew back to where they went to medical school to become practicing physicians. Next. And here's a family picture of us three kids. As you can see, we're still not dressed any better. We can always blame our mom for that. That's maybe the fashion at that time. I don't know. Next one. Here's another picture. We look like deer in headlights, some of us. or not. Alvin's napping. Next slide. Oh, here's one picture. We sometimes like to take a picture, like if you can do the same thing. But here's me and my sister, and we were young. And here's a picture of us 30 years later, still looking the same. I hope. Next slide. Here's a picture of 1978. I like the matching outfits now. That must be the style. Of course, the plaid skirt with Alina. Quite fashionable. And they're matching too. I'm with my mom. Next slide. And here's a Blessed Bill came to visit us in India in 1980. And it was quite a good time there. Well, we had a good time. We were pretty happy. Next. This is one of the last family pictures we had right before we started getting married. Alvin and I need to get married. We look pretty bummed. We were pretty upset but I think after this, my parents realized we better get them married.
No one's smiling. Oh, Alina.
So Alvin now is happy again. He's in 1994. He got married to Julia in 1994 in San Francisco. And of course, next slide. I was bummed in that picture, so I had to get married pretty soon after. And here is our wedding, Linda and myself. And of course, my parents attended all the weddings. These are the pictures we found. And next slide. Of course, at that time in Seattle, we did have a picture of everyone. A lot of us came together that could. Benitechi made it. And then, of course, Blessed and his family with Aaron and Kezia. Michaela wasn't there yet.
No.
Right?
And then Charlie
Upchen is there. So his brother and his wife right next to my father. And of course, Alvin and Julia on the left.
Is this Seattle or is this?
Yeah, that's Kezia and Farah, my mother.
Right.
She couldn't be here today, and Aaron, of course. Next slide. And then, of course, a few years later, actually a couple of years after us, Alina and Shwekam got married in India. And a very beautiful wedding, traditional, looking very smart, everybody. Alina's well dressed up and got lots of nice makeup on. Or henna, right? Next. We did have family get to 1999, and this is where we have quite a few. Alvin and Alina. No, Alina wasn't here, but Alvin and Julia, Linda and myself. I think this was in San Francisco, 1999, and Kristen and Sydney at the bottom, and Noah and Peter. Noah in my father's lap, and I'm holding Peter. Next slide. Of course, grandchildren have become a big part of my parents' lives. They find utter love and joy in being with their grandchildren. So here's their first grandchild, was Kristen. Of course, both my mom and dad enjoying them very much. Next slide. And here's that was their first grandchild. Here's their first grandson. That's Noah. Pretty happy and playing with his grandparents. Next slide. And here's the first two grandkids at that time and 14 years later.
I'm still working on the teeth, yeah.
Next slide. Here's a collection of different grandchildren. Of course, on the top left we have, Alvin and mine, two of them for the third Mikey and third Kalam. There's Noah and Sydney in the middle, and then it's Daniel, Sanjana, Daniel, Kristen, and Sydney having a blast. And the bottom right is Peter and Kristen and Sydney. We were trying to sell them. They're in a shopping cart. No one took it. Next slide. Of course, my dad loved to do his ventriloquist show, and here's Peter running away in fear. Don't want to be attacked by the two dogs. Maybe that's a dog and a cat. Of course, my dad was enjoying scaring the little children as he's running away. Next slide. And here's Daniel at Niagara Falls with his grandparents. Like I said, my grandparents, Alice and Emma, love spending time with their kids and enjoying them. Next slide. Here they are with the mom with, that's Peter, and then of course my dad with Daniel. Next slide. Of course my mom loves feeding the children every chance they get, including children and grandchildren, as you know. go to their house, there's always food being forced down our throats. Yeah. And here's Sanjana and David. So that's probably their two youngest grandkids.
Yeah.
Next slide. And of course, my father loved to play the ukulele. Of course, my mom's feeding Sanjana there. And Sanjana is probably quite enjoying the music, looking at her grandfather. Next slide. Here's another picture of Daniel and Sanjana. This is in Urbana, 2004, with the grandparents. Next slide. Here, I think they're swinging with my mom pushing them. They're having a good time. That's Daniel, Kristen, and Sydney. Someone's shoe fell off. Daddy left. Next slide. Of course, my parents came to visit us in Seattle, and this is all the three kids in Seattle. Next slide. Of course, many years later, still the same. This time he's trying to scare David, but David's not. David's quite comfortable with it. Unlike Peter, who was running away in fear. Next slide. This is not the Niagara Falls, but this is Seattle's version of the Niagara Falls. This is when Alina actually came with her family to Seattle, and we had a wonderful time hiking up to this Snoqualmie Falls in Seattle with the three. Well, actually, Peter's not in there, but David and Peter is there. For some reason, I didn't recognize Peter. I wonder why. Next. Again, while they were in Seattle, we had a family get-together. We took a family picture with all the grandkids, at least the ones that were on the West Coast. Next slide. And so, of course, I think on that same trip they did, or the trip before, they came to San Francisco, and Kristen and Sydney here, their younger versions, 5, 6 years ago. Next. In 2007, another get-together with all the kids. Of course, we went back and they like to visit us at least once a year or once every 2 years. Next slide, or we visit them. Urbana. This is you guys. This was during another visit with Alvin visiting with his family to Urbana, which is where we are now. Next slide. This was actually last year. Me and Alvin and I came over, I think at Christmas time, probably 6 months ago, until we were all taking any chance we had to have a family picture. Next slide. Here's another 10 years later. Things haven't changed, still playing video games. Daniel, Peter, and Noah enjoying themselves. Next slide. Here's Aaron and Noah, 14 years later. Isn't that amazing? Things don't change. Next slide. And here's the last two grandkids, 5 years later. Of course, we're trying to strike the same pose, and they're looking happy. The first picture wasn't actually hiking in Seattle, and this picture is outside, taken an hour ago. Oh, you missed one? Yeah, so we do, again, I do want to thank all our extended family for being here, joining us, and the ones who were not able to come but who plan to come. We want to show some pictures after that. Next slide. Tom Uncle couldn't be here. He came last time, and this is the picture from 5 years ago, but he does remember us and wishes Alex and Prema well. Next slide. Of course, we thank Ravi Barnabas and his family for coming. It's easy. It's just like go on Facebook and you find the family photos. But the three children couldn't be here today. They're busy. We like the expressions on their son who couldn't be here today. Next slide. Of course, Nandita, we thank you for coming, and Josh and Cyrus, driving all the way from Detroit. Yesterday? Thursday night, that's right. Next slide. Sunny Chan and his wife Leela, they were planning to be here, but it was a long drive for them, and and he was not feeling too well, but they do send their love and regards. And he does send his wishes, which I will be reading later. Next slide. Of course, Zach and his family. Why are you guys on a rail track?
It's supposed to be a scenic shot. That's what the photographer told us. No, this is in Pensacola.
Okay, they can try and catch a ride here. But again, a beautiful picture, and of course, everyone came except Kezia. Aaron surprised us. But Kezia is in school, so she couldn't come. Next slide. Oh, we have Michaela and Peter, 14 years later.
Sweet.
I think they were a few months old. And the next slide. Oh, we want to thank Buck, Mary, and Nathan for driving all the way, pulling an all-nighter from last night, about 11 p.m. and getting here at around noon. Is that a picture of Florida?
No, that's not Florida. It's where, look at those jackets. It's Maine.
Okay. No, look at Nathan. He just stopped. You just stopped Next slide. Here's a picture we had extended when everyone visited together. We like to have these kind of get-togethers where we all can get together, and this was one of them. That many of the families could get together, which is including Zach, the Blessing Church, and his family, and Ania Chung.
That is Babu Chan 50th.
Yeah. Oh.
Babu Chan.
Babu Chan's
Babu Chan 50th.
50th wedding.
Wedding.
Very nice. Okay, so similar to this occasion, so we should have a picture like this that we can send them after the show. Next slide.
Vijay,
We thank Vijay and his family for coming, and his two kids. We see them right there. Where's the other one? They went outside. Okay. Next slide. Of course, Kamala Mama and the three boys made it, so that's great.
Yeah. What is the outfit?
Previn, Anand, and what did you say?
Is that a graduation thing?
Yeah. Who graduated?
Oh, it's a wedding outfit? Oh, Vijay's wedding.
Oh,
Oh.
was that like the outfits? Nice. And who are you holding there? The baby.
Olivia.
That's her? Okay. That's Olivia. And Vijay is in the background. Next slide. Of course, my father's two brothers, they couldn't be here, but they sent their best wishes. Dustin and Benu's father, and of course Charlie Upton, who's in Calgary, who was planning to come, but due to health reasons couldn't make this trip. Next slide. Of course, here's this celebration is about Alex and Prema and their 50th wedding anniversary, and they're standing in front of Mount St. Helens. It doesn't look like a mountain because it blew up in 1980. One of the biggest volcanoes that happened. Of course, my father, they were on a hike, so he's got his water strapped on his back. Next slide. Again, thank you everyone for coming, and we of course thank our parents for being who they are, as Alvin said, and bringing us 3 children up, and hopefully we can continue to live for the glory of God.